Barely Research Facts is a facts-based show, barely, brought to you by ArtNowThus, an arts, events and content company based in India. The show is a trip down dissection lane of words. Every episode, the hosts, Shar and me, Ragini, choose one word and deep dive into it. Every interesting fact we can find, we research, somewhat casually, and bring to you, pairing it with some good humor and casual chat between two friends. We've got a fact-packed season 2 ahead with the usual great facts and a good chat, and we're throwing in some more guests this season to help us get you facts with that expert edge.
Welcome to the 5th episode of our second season. As you know, the moon's gravitational pull is at its strongest during the new moon and full moon. We knew you knew that. Today is a new moon. So you've guessed it. The simple creatures at Barely Research Facts have chosen moon as the word for today's episode.
Yes. We deeply research the words we choose as well.
In this episode, we discuss the scientific implications of plonking a werewolf on the moon before we spend some time deciding what exactly qualifies an organization as a cult that ruins lives, breaks up families, and causes havoc in people's lives. And then we chat about mooning, the gift of the bare posterior that has given so much to so many over the centuries. Lastly, asking for a friend. Is the moon drifting away from the Earth a problem? Enjoy the show.
So I'm going to jump in with fact number 1, which is all about werewolves and why are they so closely associated with the moon. So to begin with, when I first started thinking about this, it literally stemmed from the idea of, okay, why do we even why are werewolves a thing only around the full moon? And so I sort of went down and I tried to look for this and I tried to figure this out. But what I found out was that while I couldn't really find out where the legend of the werewolf really originates from, but the closest I came to was a story. It's a Greek legend about a man named Lycaon who angered Zeus.
The hints in the name.
Huh?
The hints in the name. They're known as Lycan, aren't they? I mean, from my extensive research in movies.
Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. I thought I was thinking of licked him on or something.
Wow. That is a huge jump. But I love it.
Sorry.
I like yours better.
Yeah. So I thought we were both cracking a dirty joke there, but apparently it was just me. Okay. Swiftly moving on. Yes, it is in the name. It's where the word lycanthropy comes from. Which is basically the act of turning into a werewolf. We're very knowledgeable. We know all this, guys. Childish humor aside. But he apparently pissed Zeus off. I think a lot of people just tend to do in a lot of Greek mythology and Zeus got pissed off.
I think he's just prone to getting pissed off.
Yeah. I don't know why people just didn't learn that. Anyway, but this guy was a bit of a dick, honestly. He made him eat a meal made out of human flesh.
Eek.
I'd be pissed off, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he didn't tell him, it's not like in you.
He didn't announce it.
No consent involved.
Yeah.
So anyway, Zeus was pissed off, and as punishment, he turned him into a wolf. So that's the first time when you hear of a man being turned into a wolf. But where this idea of a man regularly turning into a wolf at every full moon comes from, no one, at least I couldn't figure it out. If somebody else knows it, please do let me know. But however, what I did figure out is why are werewolves sort of associated with the full moon? And it turns out that apparently there have been studies in the past that have found an increase in crime rates or changes in behavior to be more in human behavior where people start acting more animalistic around the full moon or on the night of a full moon. Wow. And it's actually really interesting because it's where the word lunacy has its roots in the Latin word luna, which means moon.
Yeah.
And then of course it translates to luna in English. But so there is, so for a long time now, this connection between the moon and, lunatic behavior has sort of kind of had a correlation of sorts. But the thing that this idea of the beast being unleashed in a man, so to say, and that happens especially around, so yeah.
Stop.
Okay, we really have to, this really needs to stay PG-13. But I think, so basically the myth sort of stems from this idea, I guess, that people change in the full moon. So this is the theory around it. Yeah, this is basic history. It's what happened. But because I had to go one step further, then I was just looking through the internet and I was trying to find more stuff. And you can always count on the internet to deliver. I came across this article that was inspired by a Twitter thread on what would happen if you were to take a werewolf to the moon.
Oh, I like this.
Obviously, I had to read it. Yeah, I had to read everything about this. I'm definitely going to link the article to our show notes. It's totally worth the read, definitely. But so point one, that and this Twitter thread like got a lot of attention, and like people were like in it and have arguments and all. Yeah, because it was a thing. And eventually, like there was, so one of the main deductions from this was that if a werewolf was sent to the moon, he would have to be sent in a spacesuit because he'd die otherwise.
Okay,
So
that's a given. I like that we start with the basics.
Yeah, but this was actually pointed out by Professor Brian Cox because on the same Twitter thread, so he got involved as well. Like, so, like really, this was like really catching the right people's attention. But what would then happen is that if you were to get him to the surface of the moon in a spacesuit, you'd need to propel them up to the ionosphere on the day side of the moon for the magic to happen. What does this mean, you ask me? Now, according to Robin Andrews, who is the author of this article and the person to be credited with deducing this very ingenious hypothesis, because really, I mean, it's just amazing how much time people take to just come up with something like this and actually like back it up scientifically. But okay, so the moon, while it lacks a proper atmosphere, it's covered in an ephemeral envelope of material, which is named an exosphere, and the lunar surface frequently ejects this dust matter into space. For whatever reasons, there are little volcanoes on the moon or whatever, but for some reason this matter is continuously disturbed, and it's always like, like fairy dust all over the moon, which I think is a pretty visual. Now, this material rises, and as it sort of reaches for the stars, the sunlight interacts with it, strips off an electron or two, and turns it into a plasma. So now this means that the moon has a very thin electrified shell, and this electrified shell is known as an ionosphere. Okay, so step one.
It has a dress on that crackles. Cute.
Yeah. The moon's going to prom. So cute. Okay, now, so the Earth also has an ionosphere. We also have our prom dresses on, but thanks to the magnetic field on Earth and the fact that our atmosphere is far more prominent, it's much stronger than the ionosphere on the moon. Now, again, because the moon's ionosphere is so weak, it is often very regularly washed away by the solar wind every time it crosses the path of the sun.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and the moon is too weak to withstand this. So, the only time that the moon is able to retain its ionosphere to some degree is when the moon is hiding within the Earth's magnetic bubble, and this happens during a full moon. Because the Earth is then protecting it from the sun, and the ionosphere is like all electric and crackling, and like there's basically a lot of chemistry between the Earth and the moon at that point of time. Now, there is also some tenuous evidence apparently that does indicate that the two bodies, which is the Earth and the moon, might be exchanging some of this plasma, which is in their respective ionospheres, and especially during a full moon, when the moon is protected, it might be at its strongest. And while the effects are very likely very small and quite improbable actually, but if you had to attribute turning into a werewolf to anything, you could say that it's actually this little chemical interaction that could be blamed. So, therefore, what does this mean? This means that lycanthropy, which is the phenomena of a man becoming a wolf, is possible because these individual biological constitutions react to this chemical cocktail of a plasma created by the moon, which is most prominent during a full moon. So, if you were to put a werewolf on the moon, it would be pretty much useless unless they were, therefore, on the right side of the moon.
Oh.
And so, yeah. So this is what would happen if you put a werewolf on the moon. Means not only you need to make sure that it's absolutely there at the right time of the month, but also on the right side of the moon. So it's a and in the right outfit.
The right outfit. There's too many factors. So wait, if you put a werewolf in a spacesuit on the dark side of the moon, it wouldn't turn in.
If you go as per the theory of the fact that anything that is happening because of this
cocktail
interaction of the plasma, then on the other side of the moon, the guy would just be hanging around.
Oh, that's cool. So then, did we find the only place that a werewolf can relax on a full moon night?
Yeah. Oh, on the dark side, maybe.
It's his quiet place.
Wow,
It's his tree house. That's where he goes to chill on a full moon.
Yeah, like I just don't feel this month. It's not going to happen, guys. I'm not up for it.
I'm not up for my monthlies this month, so no.
Yeah.
I love that.
He gets all dressed up and then gets stood up.
I love that so many people went through the effort of figuring this out.
Yeah, and then one person actually went through the effort and put it down in a proper hypothesis and gave his opinions and ideas on it. And then thanks to the internet, now we all have access to it.
But that's why we love the internet. Our whole show is based on the internet. It wouldn't exist if we had to pick up a book and do this.
Yeah, no way. Who's going to do that? That's too much work, yeah.
Okay, speaking of men transitioning into other beings, I want to talk to you about a godlike man and his moon cult.
Ooh.
Oh, I know. So it's something I've never heard of before, which is surprising considering the scale of this. I don't want to say cult, but it looks like a cult. It smells like a cult and has founders and leaders that are super culty. So,
okay. So it walks like a cult and it talks like a cult.
Yeah. So for context, we're talking about the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. Apart from being a tongue twister, is...
So that's definitely a cult, right?
Just the name. Just Ragini's on it. Just the name. Sorry, guys, you're a cult. So they're widely known as the Unification Church. And its members are also referred to as Moonies. Why? Why?
Oh,
why would you?
Because they all like Harry Potter?
In a not at all kind of way. So, so Sun Myung Moon, he founded the Unification Church in Korea in the 1950s, and he claimed that he was the returning Messiah on a mission to fulfill Jesus Christ's original mission of restoring Earth to the Garden of Eden. Now, if he was just standing on a little block and preaching to people, you know, in the street, or even, say, formed a church, a small one, built it by hand, we would have been totally fine with this. Except Sun Myung Moon, along with being a preacher as well as, you know, an otherworldly being, according to himself, he built Korean and Japanese enterprises, which included factories that produced armaments, like actual guns, paint, machinery, and ginseng tea.
Wow, that's quite like the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah,
he's like war and peace, quite literally.
He wanted it all, you know, little Mooney. Yeah. So he built this into a multi-million-dollar empire, and this is while he was living in South Korea. And in the early 1970s, he got his heart set on basically beginning full-scale missionary operations in the United States. And that's when he started like coming across and getting followers and essentially brainwashing people. Let's, you know, a spade is a spade. They brainwashed people into believing in their principles and values, and then thereafter working hard for essentially just this one family. So Reverend Moon and his wife Hak Jahan are known as the true parents. Kid you not, this is on their website. This is what they call themselves. This is what they refer to themselves in all their press releases and things like that. So they believe the world peace could be achieved through marrying individuals from historically enemy countries. And these people, yeah, I mean, you know, it's been done through the ages.
Yeah, kings were doing it all the time.
Yeah, so they're just doing it now. It's fine. So these couples have to be matched through the church, and they go on to have children who are quote unquote free of sin. So I don't know if you guys listening or you, Ragini, have heard of this concept of mass wedding ceremonies that were sort of televised in the US. There's one particular one where 2,075 couples, so over 4,000 people, were married in one such ceremony in Madison Square Garden in 1982. I've seen video of this. It is scary looking. It is, there's just a sea of couples just stood together, all in wedding dresses, you know, wedding attire, and they're all looking, they're facing the stage, and Sun Myung Moon walks out. And at this point, he's like 60-ish, or maybe 60s, yeah, mid-60s. He walks out with his wife, and then he proceeds to like marry them. Now, the Unification Church teaches...
I mean, that's one way of beating the wedding industry.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know...
So cheap.
All of them together, and they all, I'm sure they paid for their own wedding dresses, and like, you know, the church had no like contribution to it.
Wow.
Who knows? So apparently the church thinks that romantic love leads to sexual promiscuity, mismatched couples, and dysfunctional societies. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
As young people were drawn into the movement, Moon incurred widespread hostility from parents or followers who believed that their children had been unfairly indoctrinated, because they would oftentimes, one of the stories that I read from a man who was indoctrinated, who was in the cult for about 2.5 years, before a head-on collision due to exhaustion and lack of sleep caused him to realize how brainwashed he was, because he was...
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what it took. And now he's dedicated his life to like getting people out of the cult, essentially. So, you know, you hear stories like this. Now, obviously, with this kind of megalomania in the founder, would you expect him not to be enticed by the dazzling world of politics and casual country manipulation? No, of course not.
Oh, okay.
So he dabbled in conservative politics and rubbed shoulders with Nixon. He even founded the Washington Times, which is a conservative newspaper, with the hopes of influencing DC. I mean, this man was just like cancer, honestly. He was everywhere, and clearly because he was rich and powerful, not because he was preaching a message that everybody agreed with. If you go to the website, it is interesting to go through. Everything from the kind of training that couples are supposed to go through to receive the blessing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the kind of positioning of the father and the mother, they call Father Moon and Mother Moon, or with affection. Otherwise,
that sounds like a children's book, though.
I mean, yeah, I think they are
like Father Moon and Mother Moon.
It does,
but like I can very, very dark twist.
I can guarantee that's probably been used in a children's book at some point. Who knows? Maybe they print their own children's books and that's what we read, but without context, it just sounds cute. But with context, it's terrifying. Who knows? Yeah. So the true parents are, they basically hoard all this knowledge. They say that they're the ones who have discovered the secret of how to fulfill the ideal of heaven, etc. So come to us, we'll teach you all of it. We'll get you married to someone who we choose. And then you can spend the rest of your life basically, giving us 10% of your monthly income, volunteering.
Really?
Yeah. There's a page on their website that talks about tithing, basically, which is donations, but it's the spiritual practice of putting God first, in their words. And
God is them, of course.
Yes, they're only one step below him, like looking up his robes, like what?
So they're the treasurers for God, basically.
Yeah.
Just give me the money, I'll go to him. Definitely, I'm giving it to God. Just give it to me.
Yeah. And you have to volunteer your support for the church, for the community. You have to do holy day donations. This is just preposterous. An offering of gratitude on special days. Now you think like, oh, Easter and like, Christian days, like things that are related to the religion. No, true parents' birthday. True father.
I am not surprised. I was expecting that.
True father's Senghua anniversary. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but I think it's the anniversary of his death. It's just ridiculous, and it's so blatant how money grabby they are. And one of the asterisks on the donation form reads, the official recommended donation is $210 per family and $120 per individual. And that's like the recommended donation. So there's the undertext, the subtext of, give us more. That's just the basic pitches. If you love us lots, then give us more.
So you've really done in-depth research into this website.
I mean, I'm basically a Moonie. No, I'm not.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I feel like you're veering. Do I need to intervene at this point?
Send me to Steve Hassan, which is the name of the guy, the 19-year-old who, crashed his car.
No, if you want to donate, just send it over the side. It's fine.
Yeah, send it to Ragini. She'll unbrainwash me.
Yeah.
My true friend, Ragini. So that's the story of the Unification Church. They're still active. The true father is dead. He's not too long ago. But the true mother
gets lots of birthday.
Yeah, she's still there. She's she's still owner of the Washington Times, and they have so many subsidiary organizations and companies that they run, from making everything from guns to tea to whatever you like. So
I find that bizarre.
Yeah, scary. Also, I wanted to mention here, I don't want to go on and on about this. I could. If you want to chat to me, you can on Instagram, because I can go on about this forever. But there's a bonus story about something called the Freedom Festival and the Rod of Iron Ministries, which is related to the Moonies. But find out more about it in our blog for this episode. So you're gonna want to read it, honestly.
Yeah. Look at that, we actually have information that's now just in the blog, because we're keeping the episode shorter.
Yeah. And onwards now.
Okay, so the Moon cult was, by any yardstick, scary and concerning and fairly serious, I'd say. And I just keeping in with the tone that we established, I'd like to stick with something equally serious, something that is a grave insult. I'd like to talk about the practice of mooning.
Yay!
Yay!
I've been waiting all episode
yeah.
for this.
Yeah, in fact, recently I was having a chat with my CA and I was like, oh my God, I can't speak to you right now because I'm in the middle of something. And he's like, yeah, I can imagine you're busy. I said, yeah, I'm actually doing in-depth research on mooning so that we can include it in the episode. And I was like, if someone ever hears what my work day is like, they're not going to believe I actually work.
Researching
here we
cults,
are.
researching mooning.
Mooning, yeah. Like, in-depth. What is the history of mooning?
What is the history of mooning?
Okay, so for a long time, I actually thought that mooning was relatively new. In fact, I really thought it was something like our generation came up with, maybe like a generation before. But when I was thinking about this, and I was like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? And then I remembering that scene. So I remember the scene in Braveheart where the entire Scottish army sort of like moons the English army. I don't know if you remember the scene.
Yeah.
But like this is, and I was like, okay, so I was like, oh, is this like creative freedom? Or has mooning just been around forever?
Yeah.
Turns out it's the latter.
Ooh.
So apparently, mooning as a phenomena dates back all the way to the Romans, from what we know. But the gesture, as we seem to know, like as we know today, which is just like showing your butt to anybody and everybody, seems to have started in the Middle Ages. Now, also just in case for those of you who don't know, mooning is just that it's just the idea of lifting your skirt or pulling your pants down or whatever and showing your bare butt to somebody as a form of an insult. So, no
I don't know why,
surprise that
Ragini,
starts off
like you describing how to remove the garment, like cracks me up. Like, could you go through like some others? Like, what if I've got a jumpsuit on?
By the way, there is a WikiHow page on mooning, and I highly recommend you check it out. I will run you through some of the questions because those are slightly concerning, and I feel like as a PSA I must address them at the end of this. But if you are interested in knowing how to moon, there is a WikiHow page about
Love it.
Which has now cemented my belief in the fact that there is a WikiHow page about everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Also, just a note, guys. Ragini wrote that article, so give it some love.
Okay, so it turns out that the first recorded instance of mooning was by the famous Roman Jewish historian Josephus in the 1st century AD. Now, according to Josephus's account, in the War of the Jews, a Roman soldier bared his rear to an audience of Jews celebrating Passover and thereby incited a furious riot that killed upwards of 30,000 people.
God.
However, when you examine this closer, you realize that he probably wasn't just baring his butt, he was also just generally farting in the direction.
What?
So that may have pissed people off even more, I imagine.
I think, yeah.
Anyway, Josephus is better with words than I am, so he puts it more delicately and says, one of the soldiers, raising his robe, stooped in an indecent attitude so as to turn his backside to the Jews and made a noise in keeping with the posture. Which just gives me a whole other respect for like medieval historians.
I like made a noise in keeping with the posture. I like how that could be subjective. Could be any noise.
Like, just so you know what he did. So
Mine is
that
That's the noise I make.
Yeah, it's not like he was just randomly making noises with his mouth.
Hey, it's I think it's left to the reader's imagination. Josephus was just
Oh, poor Josephus. After he tried so hard. So there's a lot of evidence that people continued to moon each other throughout the Middle Ages. One of the earliest known instances happened during the Fourth Crusade in 1203 when Western Europeans attempted to take Constantinople. They failed, and as the Crusader ships pulled away, the Byzantines hooted and hollered and showed their bare buttocks in derision to the fleeing foe. Also, apparently, many gargoyles of the late Middle Ages are also shown to be mooning people, though they're often also described as defecating gargoyles. So maybe they're just taking moments before the act. Now, by the early 1500s, mooning had come to the Americas, and in his explorations of the Atlantic coast, when he reached North America, Italian explorer Giovanni di Verrazzano was mooned by the cagey Abenaki tribe of Maine, who after a trade of goods showed him their buttocks and laughed. And it does seem like in the past, the Abenaki tribe had been mooned by Europeans on trade, and they were basically showing their absolute distrust. Now, mooning is not just a thing of the best, guys. It's all the way across the world, right to the other side. The oral tradition in New Zealand recalls a Maori gesture of wakafahoni, which I'm sorry if I've got the pronunciation wrong, but that's what I think
I like
it is.
the pizzazz you put into it, though. Good job.
In which an East Coast elder would flip up her skirt at an elder of another region in a deliberate act of exposure that conveyed the utmost form of insult.
Yeah.
So, and apparently, this would make headlines a century later in 1986 when a Maori activist placed an image of a Maori man bearing his butt on the side of his van and then pulled up and tried to join Queen Elizabeth's motorcade. But the White House sent out, the Buckingham Palace sent out like frantic messages, saying that don't worry, guys, the Queen didn't see anything. They were assuring everybody the Queen's limousine was, she didn't have her head out. She didn't see a thing.
Why would she have her head out? Just her head out
Oh, that could be one thing. I meant to say head turn, but yeah, we can stick with your way of looking at it.
I'm just like imagining Queenie with her head out, like a little like happy dog.
And the Buckingham Palace then tried to send frantic messages saying, no, she didn't see
It
anything.
wasn't her.
She didn't want to see this.
It wasn't her.
Okay, mooning, as we do, like the name mooning, however, only happened by the 1960s. The Oxford English Dictionary dates moon and mooning to student slang of the 1960s, where the gesture became increasingly popular at American universities in particular. And if it's not clear already, the term derives from, if you see a nice white bare buttock, it looks like the shape of a moon, I imagine, to some people. And apparently, the word moon or moons for bare buttocks has been used since the 18th century. So mooning, therefore, is the verb of showing your bare buttocks, which makes sense.
That's restricted to one kind of color of buttocks. Just saying.
Yeah. So maybe moon is actually a racist term.
Oh.
We can petition for that.
Oh, God. Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah. Oh, also the verb to moon has meant to mean to expose to the moonlight. It is also in the shape of a 0, which is the percentage of the genitals to be seen in the purest mooning.
I feel like those are like bacronyms, like explanations after the phenomenon has already been created. Love it though.
No,
regardless.
actually, to expose to the moonlight has existed since 1601.
Wow.
Yeah. We're just catching up, guys. Like all of this has always been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
So the next time I did mention the WikiHow page and we will link it to the blog post, but just a few questions. There are a couple of questions down there asking you if you can moon a child. No. A couple of people have asked that. I just feel like I should just say it. No, if you're an adult, please do not moon a child. And they've also asked if mooning, if I show the front instead of the back, is that still mooning? No, it is not. That's
Even
illegal.
I'm not an expert like Ragini, but...
Yeah, that's just indecent exposure. Just don't do it. But go through the questions on that page. It's quite interesting as well. So that's mooning, a history and a guide to doing it in public in today's day.
And who not to do it to. Love it. Now, to go to the moon's sake, go to the namesake of this mooning phenomenon, I wanted to talk a little bit about the moon and how it's basically pulling away from Earth. I don't doubt why. I suspect that with all the cults and the mooning since, the 16th century, it's gotten a little bit too much for the moon. So it's pulling away at about 3.8 centimeters per year. And scientists actually call this the lunar retreat. And the pace of this motion isn't always the same. Over the years, depending on different circumstances, it fluctuates between 0.13 centimeters per year to 27.8 centimeters per year that it's moving away. So much of the variation in the moon's pace of movement comes from lunar meteorite impacts and major geological changes on Earth. So, I'd say sociological changes also, like birth of a cult leader. Oh shit! I'm leaving you guys. This year I'm going away quicker. Sorry. So on to a section that I call Spike It, Dunk It. So there's been 3 spikes in the pace of the lunar retreat over all of time, as far as scientists can tell. About 3.2 billion years ago, around the same time as some of the earliest evidence of ocean tides, the moon started retreating at 6.93 centimeters per year. And then closer in history, 900 million years ago, it spiked to 7 centimeters again when it got bombarded with meteors and when there were huge continents a supercontinent called Rodinia that broke apart on Earth. Just the scale of this always fascinates and scares me a bit, where you're talking about a continent breaking down the middle and moving apart. It's amazing to me.
Wow. Yeah.
And then the third spike was 523 million years ago as life was exploding on Earth. So that was the third and last spike where the moon was like, oh God, I know what's going to happen. They're going to start mooning each other in about 500 million years. Just stop. And so why is there this connection, you ask? So I'm going to try and explain this just a tiny bit. Okay. The moon's gravity pulls on ocean water, that creates something called a tidal bulge that stretches slightly towards the moon. And then in return, the Earth's tidal bulge exerts gravity on the moon. Now, we all know that the Earth spins faster than the moon orbits it. So as the bulge rotates away, as the Earth is spinning, it pulls the moon along with it. So it's almost like they're in a cute little slow dance, like a slow dance in space, essentially. So,
Okay.
yeah. Despite all of these like connections that we have, and despite, exerting gravity and pulling and pushing, the moon is pulling back. And we need to stop doing crazy shit on Earth because that's probably why it's pulling back.
Okay, that's a scientific explanation.
Yes, stop doing crazy shit. And that's that for the episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, we really appreciate it if you could rate us if you're listening to the episode on iTunes or Spotify. And if you've really, really enjoyed us, maybe even leave a review. We love those things. It really helps tremendously for an independent podcast.
All right. I recently had a chat with Paul Kondo, who runs Podcast Gumbo, which is a great podcasting newsletter. If you are someone who's interested in podcasts, as an avid podcast listener, and wants to extensively add to your listen list, you must subscribe. He sends it out once every 2 weeks, and it's got his top 3 podcast recommendations each edition. So subscribe to that. And also, while you're in the mood to subscribe to things, why don't you just subscribe to our newsletter, Probably Relevant. It's run by our parent company, ArtNowThus, and it's basically the coolest newsletter on the block. It's all of the stuff that you don't find on the podcast. It's all of a bunch of other stuff. It goes out once or twice a month at best, and it's guaranteed to make you the most interesting person in any room. All right. So if you want to sign up, you can go onto our website at www.artnowthus.in. You could hit the link in our bio on Instagram. We're Barely Research Facts. You have to drop us a follow there if you don't already. And we will see you next time. This episode, as always, was edited by Mohit Chandelier. Music is by Charitha Arora. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Until then, take care. Let us know if you enjoyed the podcast and write into us. See you.